Hey everyone, it's Clay, and I wanted to make a video over Octopus J-Style Hooks versus Octopus Circle Hooks. I wanted to see the performance differences, the pros and cons of using both hooks, which one's right for me, and I hope this video will help answer which one is right for you. I've been using Octopus Circle Hooks for about a year now. In the last few trips, I've just have been kind of frustrated with them. I kept having a lot of misses, a lot of strikes, and just not successful hookups. I think part of the issue is I take a lot of guests and family members and friends that may not know what they're doing, and it's easy to get real excited and jerk that circle hook, and then you end up jerking it out of the fish's mouth without having a successful hookup. There's just a lot of technique involved with circle hooks, at least on some days, that kind of can cause you a frustrating trip, as I have had recently. So I wanted to do an experiment, and this morning it took me a little bit to find the fish, but once I found them, I caught several fish. The J-Style hook really surprised me. It hooked the fish more in the corner of the mouth than I ever thought that it would. I only had 2 fish that were gut hooked, but all the other ones were hooked right in the corner of the mouth, and one was hooked about a couple inches back on the roof of the mouth. But overall, the majority of the fish were hooked right in the corner of the mouth, just like a circle hook. It was unbelievable the way it did that. I caught, let's see, I had 15 strikes with the J hooks, and 14 fish were landed. So that is a 93% catch rate, strike to landed catch rate. And then only 2 fish were gut hooked and they were injured. One thing I noticed, those fish were small. They were white bass. And then the other one was basically a baby hybrid that was about the same size as that legal size white bass, probably 10 to 12 inches. All the legal size big hybrids I were catching would always get hooked appropriately in the corner of the mouth or just an inch back. So it was very impressive. One thing that I did like about the J-Style octopus hook is that it took no technique. I put the rod down in the rod holder. I descended the bait down to about 25 feet. That was the magic depth today with my live shad. And as soon as the fish would hit it, it would bow under, and that tension of the rod and the reel would set the hook for me. So the fish was a solid hookup at that point. Versus with the circle hook, sometimes that will work, sometimes it won't. If the fish are being aggressive, you can make it to where it'll do the same thing, grab that hook, and it's immediately fighting the rod and the tension, and that's enough to set the circle hook in appropriate, in the corner of the fish's mouth. But if the bite is finicky, you can't do that. You need to let your reel be in line out alarm mode to where the fish can grab it and just swim with it before it sets the hook. And that way you can get to your rod and slowly reel up until you catch that fish. So it's 2 different techniques for circle hooks, and sometimes one will outshine compared to the other one. One thing that I noticed about the Octopus J-Style hook is I had less bait stripped from my hooks. I'd reel them up, and my bait would either be on there or I'd have a fish on. There was only just one or 2 times where I reeled up my bait and I didn't have a bait on that J hook, and I think it was just because the bait swam off more than a fish hit it, because I was watching it very closely. The octopus hooks, the Octopus Circle Hooks, let's see, I had 12 strikes that I saw, and I landed 9 of those fish. So that is a 75% catch rate. And then only 0 of the fish were injured this trip. And that actually honestly surprises me, because the last trip I took a few days ago, I landed about 40 fish. And I had several fish that were gut hooked, even with the circle hook. So I'm actually surprised. But today I did not have any injured fish from the circle hooks. I did have one thing that I noticed, though, I had a lot of bait get stolen from my circle hooks, or at least the bait got off the hook. I don't know if it was stolen or if the bait got off, but noticeably so. I would reel up my circle hook, and it was just, I either would have a fish on there, like a hybrid, or I'd be lucky if my bait was still on there after a few minutes. So I don't know if they're getting off, or if things are picking at it and maybe stripping it before it even does anything to the rod tip to indicate that there's a fish playing with it. But it was very frustrating. So let's talk about circle hooks. Circle hooks do one of 3 things when a fish grabs it. A, it'll hook it in the corner of the mouth and make for an easy, clean release and save that fish's life. 2, it doesn't hook the fish at all and it just yanks out of the fish's mouth, and it does not lead to a successful hookup and landing of that fish. And then the third thing I've noticed, if it does hook them and it's not in the corner of the mouth, it gut hooks them. And that's the only other place it can hook them if it's not in the corner of the mouth. It has to go in past that sphincter muscle of their stomach, and then it'll sit right beyond that and hook the guts of that fish. So that's where that's one of the 3 things that the circle hooks will do: gut hook, hook in the corner of the mouth, which is way more common, or just not hook the fish at all, which I feel like is more common than gut hooking the fish. In conclusion, after this fishing trip, it was very hot, fast, and furious whenever I found the hybrids this morning with an occasional white bass mixed in. I was quite surprised at the J-Style hooks. The strike to land ratio was very high, over 90%. So if a fish took that hook and he bent the rod over, he was hooked. I mean, it just, unless you horsed him around, which is probably the reason I lost the one out of one of the fish, was because I was horsing him around and being too aggressive with him, and it pulled out close to when he got to the boat towards the top of the water. So that tells me I probably would have caught 100% of the fish that bit the J-Style hook. I had multiple rod takedowns. Many times I had all 4 of my rods down. On many occasions I had just 2 or 3 down. But in between getting the fish off and rebaiting, I found towards the end of the trip I was spending way more time and devotion on those J-Style hooks. I would get the fish off of them first, rebait them, and allow them to go back in the water. And then if they didn't get taken immediately, then I would grab my circle hooks in those few seconds and start baiting those rods out. I did not intend for that to be what I did, but that was just the performance difference on the Octopus J-Style hooks versus the Octopus Circle hooks. Initially I was trying to defend circle hooks, and then after this trip I found that I actually was neglecting them and rebaiting my J-Style hooks and messing with them in those few seconds I had free, and then giving attention to these circle hooks. That was the performance difference, and I actually did not expect that at all. So that speaks volumes. I'm actually retying all Octopus 2-aught J-Style hooks on my 4 fishing rods that I use for live shad fishing for hybrids and white bass. I hope you enjoyed this video. Comment below, let me know what you use. Do you use circle hooks, J-Style hooks, and why do you use them, and what techniques do you find helps you put fish in the boat? Do you let your fish run with the circle hooks and then reel in real slow? Does he grab it and he's immediately meeting tension? What works best for you using circle hooks? What works best for you whenever you're using the J-Style hooks? Thanks for checking out the video. Feel free to leave a thumbs up and subscribe if you like this content and want more videos just like this.